Welcome to Work from the Inside Out, a podcast that highlights real-life stories, practical strategies, and best practices for transitioning your career from unhappiness and dissatisfaction to fulfillment, meaning, and joy. Now here is your host, career and executive coach, Tammy Guler-Loeb.
Hey everybody, I am so excited to introduce my guest today, Perry Marshall. Perry is one of the most expensive business strategists in the world. He is endorsed in Forbes and Inc. magazine. He's guided clients like FanDuel and Infusionsoft from startup to hundreds of millions of dollars. He founded the $10 million Evolution 2.0 prize with judges from Harvard, Oxford, and MIT. Launched at the Royal Society in London, it's the world's largest science research award. NASA's Jet Propulsion Labs uses his 80-20 curve as a productivity tool. His reinvention of the Pareto principle is published in Harvard Business Review. His Google book laid the foundations for the $100 billion pay-per-click industry. An Ultimate Guide to Google Ads is the world's best-selling book on internet advertising. Marketing maverick Dan Kennedy says, if you don't know who Perry Marshall is, unforgivable. Perry's an honest man in a field rife with charlatans. He's consulted in over 300 industries. He has a degree in electrical engineering and lives in Chicago. Please join me in welcoming Perry Marshall. Hey, Perry.
Thank you, Tammy. Thanks for having me on. I think we're going to have a fun conversation today.
I think we are too. So, work from the inside out. It's all about the transitions and the twists and the turns we take in our lives and our careers. And there's no doubt in my mind, you've been through a lot of them. So take us back to the early years and tell us what it was like before you became the most expensive business strategist.
Well, one of the big turning points was I was probably 26 years old, and I was working as an engineer, and I get called into this meeting. And you ever been in a meeting where you're like, why am I in a meeting with that person, that person, that person, that person? We're all from all these different departments. Well, we were all getting laid off. And so my wife is 3 months pregnant with our first kid. We've lived in Chicago for 2.5 years, and I got to do something here. And I could have stayed in the industry if I moved to a different city. I didn't want to start all over like that. And so I took a job in sales instead. And I remember this friend of mine goes, Perry, you don't just stick a pencil behind your ear and switch professions. Like, this could be a little tricky. And I'm like, yeah, those sales guys that call on me don't seem all that smart. This shouldn't be too hard. Well, oh my goodness, 2 years later with bologna sandwiches and ramen soup and spiraling credit card debt and and all that other stuff, was like, wow, this is a lot harder than I thought it was going to be. And I stumbled. So I eventually got fired from the next job that I took.
Wow.
Years later. But before that happened, I stumbled into a seminar where a guy was talking about direct marketing, which this is the late 90s. And back then, direct marketing was like gadget catalog in an airline seat, or mail order, or stuff like that. And the internet hadn't really become a popular form of commerce. And I started learning really basic old school advertising. And to make a long story short, it helped me figure out much faster that some stuff I was doing wasn't working and wasn't going to work, because I was trying to sell with shoe leather, And what I learned was, well, here's how to just lick a stamp and convert this to a dollars and cents problem. Like, well, if you mail out 100 letters or 1,000 letters or however much it costs you to do that, and enough people respond, then you don't have to do shoe leather. But once it was how many dollars in and how many dollars out,
Yeah.
it was like, oh, this will never work.
Hmm.
I just never figured that out when it was shoe leather. Okay. like sometimes you have to reframe a problem before you realize that you're just completely off track, right?
I think that's true most of the time, don't you think?
Absolutely.
So I'm curious, Perry, you went from I just want to make sure I get this right. You went from the engineering job, your wife is 3 months pregnant, you get laid off, and you're just thinking, I just need another job.
Well, yeah, and I got another job. I got a sales job, and now I'm pounding the phone and pounding the pavement, and I'm going through the manufacturer's directory, and I'm driving to the steel mill and Ford Motor Company, and I'm doing all this stuff, but it wasn't working.
Right, and that's when you learn the lesson through the direct marketing seminar.
Right. And but the other thing, well, that job was just a bad fit, and I got fired just before Thanksgiving.
Oh.
And I had a job interview like literally 2 days before.
Oh.
And I managed to get the next job without them ever figuring out that I got fired. Like, in fact, I think that Thanksgiving vacation kind of helped a little bit,
Uh-huh.
Okay. And so I show up at this new job, and the reason they gave me the job was, how like you may later find out that there was this one question that landed you the job.
Yeah.
And the question was, so Perry, let's say we didn't have any money to put you on airplanes and go see all these customers that are all over the country. What would you do? And I go, well, I'll just talk to them on the phone, and I'll send them emails, and we'll figure out how to sell the stuff anyway.
Yeah.
And they didn't have a travel budget, and they were this consulting company that was trying to scrape together a product line.
Uh-huh.
And so if they get a cheap sales guy who could somehow manage to make things work, and so I'm reading these newsletters and listening to these tapes about direct mail, and I'm going, and this company, this is 1997, they had a website, and it was a pretty good website for its time.
Yeah.
And it was for engineers. And I was looking at this and I'm going, nobody's explicitly saying this, but as far as I can tell, a direct mail piece and a web page are like the same thing.
Yeah.
As far as I could tell.
Yep.
So if I take all of these headlines and response mechanisms and stuff like that and testing concepts, and I just do them on our website, I think that'll probably work. Well, it did. And the other thing about it was, somehow or another, an engineer had to learn how to sell. And that's actually not easy. Most engineers have quite a bit of difficulty bridging, because the sales word, frankly, it's just too illogical.
Right.
There's too many things that just don't make any sense, right?
Yeah. Yeah, they're very, very different sides of the brain, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
And people don't do anything for the reasons you think they should.
Oh, you're right.
Right. Yeah. Okay. And so, but reading these copywriting books, I finally started understanding, like, oh, here's what a good sales pitch actually consists of.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember going into an appointment where it kind of clicked in my head during the appointment. If you just do the same thing in front of this person as you would write in a sales letter, it will work. You need a commanding opening headline and a statement that's going to grab their attention. And then you need to rub some salt in their wound and get them really agitated about the problems that they haven't solved yet. And then you need to make a big promise, okay, and ask them to do something. And I'm like, I'll be darned. Like, how come nobody ever said that? I mean, they probably did. Right. But it never sank in, right? It was like, oh, I get it. And And direct marketing was and still is
Yeah.
the perfect way for an engineer to sell. Because
Well, it's like a process, right?
Yeah.
It's very methodical.
yes,
Yeah.
yes. And you can do like, oh, you want to test a different web page or test a different Facebook ad or test a different price or what? Oh yeah, like it's just a big giant science experiment. You understand that.
Yeah.
And so that company grew 2,000%.
Wow.
And we ended up selling it to a public company for $18 million. And so literally in the space of 4 years, I went from a guy who could barely pay for the diapers, literally. I mean, we were hanging on by our fingernails. We were even like, well, if this keeps going, Perry, like, are we going to be like moving in with my parents? Because, like it was getting bad. I get my stock options and, and I pay off my debts and I hang out my shingle. And so, yeah, it was like a whirlwind of experiences,
Wow.
just compressed in 4 years. It was just incredible.
Wow. I'm curious, during that time that, where you were on this huge learning curve, but you were figuring things out, and yet there was still some element of struggle in there. Did it ever occur to you to go back to engineering? I mean, which was a noble profession in many ways.
It was pretty much impossible because with the qualifications that I had, there wasn't any engineering position I was aware of that was going to pay me enough there where my wife could stay at home. And like, okay, maybe if I was a senior engineer and I had 10 more years experience, but it was sort of like once I went to the dark side, there was no going back.
I see.
I just didn't see any way to make that work. And so it was like one of those burn the bridges kind of things where like, dude, you have to make this work.
I see.
Or you will be moving in with your.
So it was a pragmatic decision.
Yeah.
And did you ever consider any other pathways or any other options or avenues at that time?
No, I knew that. So I remember I got into multi-level marketing when I was in engineering school, and I was never very successful at it. Okay, but there was this baptism by fire in the beginning where it was extremely uncomfortable, but I kind of got over that and I kind of got acclimated to it. And I remember realizing that in sales, one appointment and one deal could feed 10 engineers for 2 years. Right? Like an engineer could methodically, patiently work on some project and just push it an inch at a time until it's done. A sales guy could have nothing for months, and in one day, like close a deal.
Yeah.
And I saw it was like, now that you understand that, you can't go back to not knowing that.
Yeah.
If you want to be influential in the world, you can still have your engineering skills and all that. That's great. But you need to learn how to influence people. And that's hard. Like people are harder than engineering problems.
Yeah.
Right. So I just, that was also a kind of another one of those no return sort of things.
Yeah.
Once I knew that, I can't back down from when I really know I need to master something. I don't know how to like dismiss it.
Yeah, no, I hear you. I think, there's another key in here that I think is important to point out that sometimes people miss in the process of trying to grow themselves. And that is, you have to know yourself. You have to know something about yourself. And if you don't pay attention to those cues and you keep trying to fit that, square peg into the round hole, then you're going to keep stumbling over your own feet. So it sounded like you were paying attention. This is who I am. These are the things that are important to me. I have a family. I want to live this kind of a family life. I want to take care of my family. And these are some ways that, these are some rules of the road that I want to follow and grow and make it work this way.
Yeah. Yeah. And so I think there are always, whenever you're in that situation, there are periods of time when you're just going to have an incredible amount of self-doubt and you haven't figured it out, and you can't, it's like you're crawling in a tunnel and you don't know how long the tunnel is, but you can't go backwards.
But yet there was something else at play when you were crawling through the tunnel. There was something else telling you to keep crawling.
Yes. Yes. Very true. And I think one of the most important things that you do in your life is you learn to tell when that inner beacon is saying, no, just keep going, keep going. Something will come up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Were there any other people in your life or any other elements in your life that also supported you in that?
Well, yeah. I mean, my wife was astoundingly patient with all of that. So there's no question about that. I also had, there were all these people along the way. Like, I can think of it, an English professor, a guidance counselor that had told me things like, Perry, you are going to make a serious dent in the world someday. And they weren't just blowing smoke. They really believed that. They really saw potential. But like I was just saying a minute ago, there are going to be times when you're like, so what was he talking about anyway? Yeah. You're like, so far, all I have managed to do is bungle this and screw up that. This didn't work. And boy, that was a total embarrassment. And, you have this long string of failures. And I think people don't realize that, the rule about how the world works is that 80% of the stuff you do fails. Yeah. And boy, if there's any flaw in the straight A 4.0 student paradigm, that's it. Yeah. Right? Like, now I was never a straight A student, actually. I was always a B student. It wasn't so much that I wasn't capable of being a straight A student. I just didn't think it was nearly interesting enough to apply to that level. But when I think of the life that I've had for the last 30 years and just the way it's been. Yeah. And then I think about like the 4.0 students I knew in school. Boy, if you're like 25 years old and you've never failed at anything, man, 80% failure's got to be a rude awakening, or you just paint yourself into some corner where everything you do gets to be perfect. How's that going to work? Like, right. I mean, you probably coach more people like that than I have. I don't know what they do, but I don't even think the straight A mentality is even helpful to most people. No, I think it's actually a barrier because you have nothing else to bounce it off of. If you don't learn along the way what doesn't work, then how are you going to figure out what does work? Yeah. There's no way. I remember in an engineering class where the professor, who was actually the department head, he gave us a problem, like this math problem. And it turned out it is literally mathematically impossible to solve it without a computer. And this was before computers were really like everywhere. And so I finally figured it out, and I figured out the answer, and it was mostly from talking to the other classmates. And when I came to class, I actually got mad at him. And I remember he just sort of stared at me, and he didn't really answer me. And I later realized that most of the things I was ever going to do in my life were a lot more like that problem than the assignments where the answer, it's like in the back of the book, or it's in the back of the teacher's book and it's already figured out. You're just supposed, like, I was mad at him for not even giving us a hint, like you know, it's going to take some extra resourcefulness to solve this. And later I had a grow up moment. It's like, most of the time, nobody's going to tell you.
Right.
Nobody's ever figured this out, or this is completely impossible, but we didn't
Right.
tell you it's completely impossible. And
Right.
I want to see if you're smart enough. Like when I have job openings,
Yeah.
we give people assignments to do stuff, and it's not necessarily easy stuff.
Right.
And we want to see what they're going to do.
Right.
Right? It's like, I might not even care what you do as long as I can find out whatever it was.
Yeah.
It's going to tell me something about
Right.
you.
Exactly.
So I think the world is full of open book tests where nobody knows where the answer guide is,
Right.
or whether there even is one.
Right. Right. Yeah, I teach a course these days where we give an exam, and the students spend so much time worrying about the exam that I think they miss half of what we're teaching, because they're just so worried about the exam. And so what we end up doing is we end up putting all the answers on the wall right in front of them, pretty much in the review for the exam.
Okay.
And they still get some of it wrong.
Wow. Wow.
You know, because I think people just get these ideas built up in their heads about how things should be, you know, or that they just repetitively tell themselves, oh, I'm nervous before exams, so I'm going to be nervous about this too.
Yeah.
And it's like, if you could just sort of clear that all away and just go into it with an open mind, right? Like I can imagine you get all kinds of very interesting responses to some of the assignments you give new candidates when you're hiring.
Oh, yes. Like about 10 years ago, we were hiring, let's just simplify it and call it a sales position. And so we gave this assignment to all these people, and it was over a holiday. I think it was between Christmas and New Year's. And so I had several people were like, excuse me, it's December 27 and nobody's in the office this week. This isn't even possible. Well, one guy just went out and he basically found me a deal. Like, he just reached out to somebody. He's like, hey, got this guy over here and he needs something. I think could I hook you guys together? And guy's like, sure. And he showed up with this deal on a silver platter. I'm like, well, I had like 3 or 4 people tell me it's the week between Christmas and New Year's.
Right.
And you brought me a buffalo carcass, and now we're all, now we're roasting buffalo over the fire. Like, this is awesome, right? And
I love it.
That's the guy you want to hire. In fact, that guy, he worked with us as a contractor for about 6 or 7 years, and he's still a collaborator. He's still a colleague. He's gone on to build a great company. He's overqualified to work for me now. Like, it's above his pay grade, and I'm just super proud of him, right? Yeah. And there are really good people out there, but like, it's needles in a haystack to find them.
Well, I love that example you just gave, though, because it really, there's a very simple lesson in there, and yet somehow it doesn't get implemented very simply by most people. And that is, don't assume anything. Clients say to me all the time, oh, well, things slow down around the holidays, or things slow down in August, so I'm going to kind of take a few weeks off from my job search. And I always say to them, no. This is exactly the time you should be calling people, networking. I mean, holidays are a great time to network, because everybody else assumes that no one's doing anything. And guess what? You're going to find people who are more available to pick up the phone, or people who have slowed down, so therefore they're more available to talk to you. And I know one time years ago, I got a job Christmas week. I was hired Christmas week. So, I think whenever we start to take things for granted, or we make assumptions, and we know what happens when you assume, that's when you can make those kinds of mistakes. And so I love the story about that guy who brought in the business December 27th, because it's so easy to just, oh, well, nothing happens that week. Well, yes, people still go on with their lives that week.
They do.
And, that may be your best opportunity. So, if you want to take the week off, by all means, go for it. But then you're just leaving the space open for someone else to step in.
That's it.
So Perry, you shared, some what you call failures. I mean, to me, maybe because I've talked to so many people who have, been through layoffs and firings, and even when people get fired, it's not always what you think it is. Sometimes there's a fine line between what a layoff and a firing can be sometimes, but it's always an opportunity for learning, and it can be painful, though. Needless to say, those experiences are painful. But without those experiences, you wouldn't have stepped into probably a lot of the things that you've moved into since. So it sounds like from that job that you got after the firing, just before Thanksgiving, it sounds like your timing has always been so great. Right before you have a wife who's pregnant, you get laid off. Then right before Thanksgiving, you get fired. You have great timing there. So 1997, you're going to a direct marketing seminar. Sounds like you're a natural learner. You're listening to tapes, going to seminars, learning as you go along. You're not afraid to learn anything. And
yeah, in fact, I probably call myself a seminar junkie. And there's an entire culture of people like that. And
oh yeah.
Some of them only just want to go to seminars for the entertainment, but what I find most of them are very enterprising, very curious. Their brains are just hungry.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And in fact, they make some of the best collaborators, employees, business partners, clients.
Yep.
Because there's just an incredible number of connections. And one of the trends that I see in the world, that's where a pendulum is starting to swing the other way, is the world has become over specialized.
Mm-hmm.
And like when you go into academia, I do a lot of work in science, and you will find people, they are an inch wide and a mile deep, and they can tell you everything there is to know about one particular strain of bacteria, and they hardly seem to know anything else. And a characteristic of sort of the seminar junkie, the good ones, it is they're interdisciplinary. And I'm seeing the word interdisciplinary come up more and more. And just to give you a wider context, I see that as probably we are at the end point of maybe a 20 or 30 year cycle where most people are still in the over specialized world. And there's a marketing version of that, which maybe we can talk about if you want to bookmark that thought. But most fields have gotten so specialized, and so that nobody is popping their head up above all the other cubicle in the cubicle farm and going, hey, like, what's really going on here? And everybody's like, well, I'm pretty sure the person in those cubicles over there, somebody over there probably knows that answer, and somebody over there knows that answer. And what you often find out is nobody knows the answer. Nobody's even asking.
Mm-hmm.
And nobody's figured out that the ship is not even pointed
Right.
in the right direction.
Right.
And there's a marketing version of this too, which is, now I always tell people when they're trying to sell themselves. In fact, I think I've given this advice 3 times today to people who are either freelancers or coaches or consultants. I say, you need to define yourself as narrowly as possible.
Mm-hmm.
Like, my customer isn't like anybody who owns a restaurant, which is like 46 million people. It's it's people over the age of 47 who own Vietnamese potbelly pigs. Like you need to be that precise, okay? And that is true when you are marketing yourself.
Right.
But as soon as you have done the veterinary surgery on the Vietnamese potbelly pig, which got that person in your office in the first place,
right,
you better know something else.
Right.
Because the best consultants are actually generalists.
That's right.
The best consultants know something about everything. They've seen a lot of problems, and they're starting to see, like, okay, I've seen 11 different versions of that problem. It just happens that they were all in these other industries, but you got the same disease all those other people had, and here, take this pill because that will fix it. And so see, this is not bad news. This is good news, because being stuck in your same little boring field gets really old after a while. And I'm not sure a lot of people understand. So do you realize that if you own a bowling alley, you totally have permission to go to a neuroscience conference? There isn't a reason in the world for you not. In fact, you might be the only bowling alley guy at the neuroscience conference.
Right.
Good for you.
Right.
And the smartest people I know are doing stuff like that.
Yep.
They're interested in like all these different things.
Yeah.
And I can't tell you how important that is. It's like, okay.
Oh, I just made me think of something that I tell people all the time, which is, and this is it's sort of, it's a little bit of a parallel to what you're saying, but I tell people, right out of the pages of Dale Carnegie, be interested, not interesting. It's almost like you want to take the focus off of yourself a little bit, but, it makes me think of a Chamber of Commerce meeting I went to, where, everybody there is in business. And then someone stands up to introduce themselves, and they stood up and they said, well, I'm a job seeker. Most people who are job seekers don't go to Chambers of Commerce meetings.
It's the best place to go.
It was the best place to go. And they had the guts to get up and say, I'm looking for a job. And it was like, I love the notion of an owner of a bowling alley going to a neuroscience conference. What a great idea.
Yes.
Yeah.
And you should be interested in neuroscience or whatever. Like,
right.
There's nothing more endearing than somebody who is just so passionate about something that they can't help but get you excited. Like, wow, I just had the most interesting conversation about neuroscience. I never thought that was interesting before today.
Yeah.
But listen to that guy.
Yeah. No, I think you're right. And I think too often people, it's not just that what they know, it's how they behave, right? They behave in those narrow ways. And I love what you're saying, though, about marketing, is you do have to start off narrow, and then, but you develop those trusting relationships, and people will start to come to you for other things too. I've heard the term, I had a guest on the show a few episodes ago who talked about intersectionality.
Yeah.
And that there's something about being flexible in that you can be a specialist, but you also need to make yourself useful and be able to meet people at a variety of intersections, so to speak. And to have the facility to do that might take a certain amount of finesse or, some kind of intelligence. But those are the people who are going to be in much higher demand going forward.
Indeed.
Yeah. It's an excellent point. So I'm dying of curiosity about your 80-20 curve, your Evolution 2.0 prize. There's so many things here that you've done that we have to talk about.
So 80-20. So I had one of the biggest epiphanies in my life about 15 years ago. I was reading Richard Koch's book called The 80-20 Principle, which I think everybody needs to understand 80-20. It applies everywhere. So maybe I'll stop evangelizing and just tell you the story and it'll be clear. So I sort of vaguely knew that 20% of the people own 80% of the real estate and 20% of the customers spend 80% of the money. I knew that. I didn't know that much to do about it. But I'm reading Richard's book and he makes this almost throwaway remark. And the remark was, so 80-20 has a lot to do with fractals and chaos. And then he just went on. He never said anything else about it in the book. And as soon as he said that, I'm like, ooh, wait a minute. I have studied chaos theory. And one of the most interesting things about chaos theory is that there's patterns and patterns and patterns and patterns and patterns. So like there's a tree outside my window and I can see the whole branching of the pattern of the tree. But if I zoom in and zoom in and zoom in and zoom in, every time I zoom, it's the branching pattern again and again. And so I can go to the twigs and the branches, to the leaves, to the veins in the leaves, to the little, the veins feeding the cells between, and I mean, I can literally go down to 20 cells in a microscope slide and I still have a branching pattern. That's what fractal patterns are like. And as soon as he said that, I go, wait a minute, is he saying that there's an 80-20 inside every 80-20? And I jumped up and I went home, and an hour later, my wife walks in the door and looks at, she's like, what happened to you? I am sprawled on the living room with all of these papers and a calculator. And I had hung out my shingle in a year and a half before. I had a year and a half of business data and spreadsheets and, customer sales and everything. And I was like, oh my word, there's 80-20s inside 80-20s inside 80-20s, even in a year and a half of doing business. So let me unpack this a little bit.
Yeah.
So 80-20 says that I don't care it doesn't even matter what you sell. You could be a restaurant, you could sell yarn at a yarn store, you could be a life coach, like whatever.
Yeah.
20% of your customers are going to give you 80% of the money that you get. And 20% of the 20% are going to give you 80% of the 80%. So that means 4% of your customers are going to give you 64% of your money. And then you could do it again. You can take the top 20% of that, which means that 1% of your customers are going to give you 50% of your business. And when I was like, oh my goodness, so that means that you can use 80-20 to predict, like you could do a beta test for 1 week of selling one product with a Google ad, and you could be carving them out of a bar of soap just to have something to ship. Okay. But from 1 week of data, you could extrapolate, all right, well, we got 1,500 people to come through and we got 25 of them to buy and they spent X amount of dollars, and you could extrapolate an entire business. Okay, therefore, if that's true, then a percentage of them would spend 10 times more, and a percentage of them would spend 10 times more, and you can predict the whole entire thing. And so like a few years ago, I got this email from a guy at Jet Propulsion Labs. He goes, hey, we got this productivity course and we really like this tool that you've got. Do you mind if we use some graphics from your book? And it's like, oh, well, like at JPL, Caltech, and NASA think this is good, right? But I figured out this formula because I'm an engineer.
Right.
And so my book, 80/20 Sales and Marketing, goes deep into this. And almost everything in your life is 80/20. Like,
yeah,
80% of the dirt is on 20% of your carpet. It's literally that pervasive. And once you see it, you can't unsee it.
Yeah.
And so, and what it really tells you, to cut to the chase, is that most of what you're doing, you don't need to be doing at all. Okay, that's really what it comes down to. There is a chart in my book. It's a page, I'll tell you in a second. It's like page 23. It's got this whole list of, there's a whole bunch of tasks that are $10 an hour.
So this is the book, Detox, Declutter, Dominate: How to Excel by Elimination.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. How to excel by elimination. That's kind of the punchline, right?
Right.
Well, there's a whole bunch of things in your day that I categorize as $10 an hour tasks. Like pretty much anybody could do them, right?
Yep.
And then you have $100 an hour tasks, but there's $1,000 and $10,000 an hour tasks. And people think of money in linear terms. People think of money in terms of, I made $10 an hour, and then I got a job that paid 13, and then I got a job that paid 16, and then I got it. That's not how money works.
Right.
Money works on a log scale. Money is exponential.
Right.
Some 2 minutes, you're making $10,000 an hour, 2 minutes an hour, and you're making zero the rest of the time. And most people are completely unaware of the distinction. Hey, wait a minute. You made $10,000 an hour for a minute and a half. What were you doing? Well, Helen works in a dentist office and somebody's calls and they need $2,500 of dental work.
Right.
Well, she says, Wooddale Dental, please hold. And then 2 minutes of hold music and then they're gone. She just lost $2,500 of business in 2 minutes. That's $1,250 a minute. That's
right.
What, $70,000 an hour by putting people on hold? Now, so in my book, however many meetings, processes, procedures that it takes to make sure that the $2,500 patient never gets put on hold and always gets transferred to the right person.
Right.
However long it takes them to do that, that's $1,000 an hour work.
Right.
And it's everywhere. It's all over the place. Even for Helen, who makes $15 an hour and thinks she's the least important person in the business. Well, 2 minutes a day, she is the most important person in the business. She's more important than the dentist. She's more important than the landlord. And life is full of these levers.
Yeah.
And if you can grab onto the levers, frankly, you can let go of a lot of other stuff and not even do it.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a great explanation. I totally agree that people don't think about things in those terms or drill it down. That's where the engineering mind comes into play, right? And
yes.
And fortunately for you, NASA recognized that.
Yeah, it's good.
That's really good. Really good.
Yeah, and brag about it. So
yeah, and then the pay per click industry seemed to be another area that really tapped in.
So in 2002, I had been in business for 6 months, struggling freelancer, just hustling, got some clients, paying the bills. And, a lot of times a person in that situation has a certain amount of time in their hands. And I did. And I could have taken more client work, but my gut was telling me, no, you actually kind of need to build your platform rather than just immersing yourself into client work. And so I was doing that. And Google started selling advertising for the first time. And I started experimenting with it. And after a few days of this, I was like, this is the coolest thing I have ever seen in my life. You can now, people are used to this now. So it's hard to appreciate how new this was. So the entire English language is up for auction. You can bid on any phrase or any word that you want to. You can bid on plumber. You can bid on marketing consultant. You could bid on mow my grass. And your ad will show up and you pay when people click on the ad.
Right.
That's what pay per click means.
Right.
Right. And my goodness, this is like the coolest thing since television. And I started experimenting with this. Now, in hindsight, I was far from the most qualified person to figure this out and go teach it to the world. There were lots of people who had far more marketing experience, far more credentials, far more everything. But I happened to be in a spot where I needed leads for my business. I needed exposure. And so I'm bidding on these keywords. I'm mailing out these CDs to people who request them and all of that. And I figured out, like, this is how you set up a Google ad campaign. You do this first, and then you do this, and you don't do it this other way. And well, eventually some people found out what I was doing, and I got asked to speak at a seminar. And then right about that time, Google hit the hockey stick. Because Google was just this weird little company with a white web page, like,
right.
Well, they don't really look like Yahoo or Alta Vista.
Right. And
Google went supernova, and it just turned into this magic carpet ride.
Yeah.
And I think one of the lessons in that, and this goes to the how to excel by elimination theme, is that most of the time in your life, not all, but most, you ought to have some experimental creative space where you're just doing your crazy mad scientist experiments. I call it Renaissance time.
Right. Yeah. Let's talk about that for a moment. I wanted to talk about your Renaissance time and your model, your 4 quadrants of work. Let's go there, if that's okay.
Yeah, let's do that. So in English, if you want to say you love someone, you say LOVE, love. Greek has 3 words. Greek has phileo, which is like your basic brotherly, neighborly love. Philadelphia is named a city of brotherly love, right? There's eros, which is lust, and sex, which is quite obviously different from brotherly love, right? And then there's agape, which is like, no, like I would die for that person. Okay. I totally unselfish. It's not a transactional thing. They have 3 words for it. Well, I got into a disagreement with one of my mentors about 6 years ago because I was talking about the need to make space, kind of that mad scientist sort of space in your life, where it was, to him, it sounded like I was just telling people to be lazy.
Oh.
And I realized that that we needed more words for work in order to think clearly about what it is. And so I divided work into 4 categories instead of 1. And so the categories are work ethic. Work ethic is when you're an attorney, you bill $250 an hour, and you're really good at tort law, and it's you doing tort law for the right kind of client for $250 an hour because you're in your zone. That's what work ethic is.
Yeah.
Okay? It's productive and it's predictable. Okay.
Right.
And this is what most people are referring to when they talk about working hard and being efficient and
Right.
all that. Okay.
Right.
Now, there's another kind of work. I call it barnacles. And barnacles is low value, typically obsessive, thoughtless, reactive work that initially feels like you're doing something, but it's actually not really productive at all.
Mm-hmm.
It's hitting refresh on your email box 87 times a day. It's going to LinkedIn 16 times a day. It's maybe you do certain OCD sorts of things when you're anxious instead of doing what you really should be doing, and shuffling papers or something. Okay, that's barnacles.
Yeah.
And most of it you shouldn't even be doing at all. Like, in fact, most people could just clear 1, 2, 3, 4 hours out of their day. You don't need to drive to Staples. Have your assistant do that. Okay.
Right.
Stuff like that.
Right. Right.
Then there's sweetness. That's taking a day off.
Right.
And there's way too many people who work 7 days a week. They're in their email box 7 days a week, right? They have very lousy boundary between work and play, and it just bleeds together. It's very okay, speaking from experience, if you work 7 days a week, you will kill your relationships.
Yeah.
Your family will resent you. Your spouse will, okay. Now, Renaissance time is the 4th quadrant.
Right.
That is unpredictably productive time, and so it's usually wildly unpredictable.
Yeah.
And it's under no obligation to have any immediate payoff. Okay, so here's a really practical example of Renaissance time. If you're looking for a job, it might be a good idea to have lunch with your good friend and ask them who they know. It's a lot better idea to have lunch with somebody you barely know and ask them who they know.
Right.
Like the best connections are going to come from the edge of your network.
Right.
And that's true across the board. I don't care if you're looking for a job or if you're a heart surgeon or whatever.
I totally agree.
Okay, now, having lunch with random people at the far edge of your network is only going to pay off 5% of the time. It is not going to pay off 95% of the time. But that's Renaissance time, especially if you just make it fun.
Right.
Now, sure, you can have an objective or make sure that your checklist, whatever. Okay, but 95% of the time, you can just go, I'm going to have lunch and I'm going to meet an interesting person and I'm just going to see where it goes. I'm going to ask them who they know or, what they think is interesting. And 5% of the time, it might be how I meet Mark Zuckerberg.
Right.
Right. And it could be pushing your kid on the swing. It could be going to a concert. It's the bowling alley guy who goes to a neuroscience conference.
Right.
There may be no possible way that anybody could rationalize that the neuroscience conference is going to pay off in the bowling alley, but it's going to pay off somewhere, somehow.
That's right.
Right. And I find the most prolific, productive, successful people I know have some version of this. A lot of times they wouldn't call it this. They might describe it this way, but they have it.
Yeah. Yeah. Yep. I'm a subscriber to all of that. But I like the way you frame it, because you're not just talking about a payoff in dollars and cents.
Right.
You're talking about value that is somewhat intangible, but can become tangible over time. And I think it's important for the listeners here to hear that from you, because it would be very almost oversimplistic for them to hear based on, let's say, the initial introduction, right? Where we talk about you being one of the most expensive business strategists and, finding a $10 million prize and all of these high ticket items and the level of high ticket business that you do. And yet, when we look at this model, right, your quadrants of work model, and you talk about Renaissance time and the value that that can provide, without it being nearly as tangible and yet highly valuable, it's important to see that side, I think, because we know in our hearts of hearts that those are the things that come up that eventually bear some fruit somewhere, right?
Yeah. And see, if you're arranging your work in an 80-20 way instead of a traditional way,
Right.
and most of your productivity is in a 2 to 4 hour window.
Yeah.
And it's when you're doing your work ethic stuff and you're
Right.
paying your bills.
Right.
And that allows you to have a large amount of other creative space that's actually fun.
Right.
And it gives you the ability to do things that increase your energy enthusiasm instead of draining it.
Right. Right.
And when your energy and enthusiasm bucket is constantly drifting more full instead of constantly drifting less full, over time, the compound interest on that is huge.
Yes, I agree. So tell us what we can look forward to from here on out. What are you up to most recently? I mean, we have your Detox, Declutter, Dominate, How to Excel by Elimination book, which is incredibly accessible and valuable.
It's 36 pages.
I mean, it's the
shortest business manifesto I've ever seen.
And it's visually just so accessible and engaging. This will all be in the show notes. I will be spreading the word, Perry. And we'll also be listing your other books as well, for sure. I really love the example and the examples you're sharing here today, and your own story is really helpful. What other things are you up to these days that you want to make sure our listeners are aware of?
Well, I would like people to leave this interview with the idea of step 3 in the book: earn $1,000 an hour, 1 hour a day, with 80-20 time. Now, most people, if they actually made $1,000 an hour for an hour a day, it'd be financially just fine, right? Now, probably most people, if you divide it out, they're making $28 an hour, or $32 an hour, like some number like that.
Yeah.
But like the dentist, Helen answering the phone example, if you could sort of put on those X-ray goggles and suddenly see, hey, wait a minute. The last 45 minutes was, let's admit it, totally worthless.
Yeah.
Okay. And the most valuable things, what were the 5 most valuable events yesterday?
Yeah.
You start looking. Well, it was this phone call. It was this email. Yeah. It was this little bit of inspiration that I got coming out of the shower.
Yeah.
It was this random conversation I had with my coworker. that was 1% of my day. It was 50% of what I got out of yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
As soon as you see that,
Mm-hmm.
and you go, how do I 80-20 tomorrow? Like
Right.
80-20 is a verb.
Right, 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 right.
You will find yourself going up an escalator to higher levels of value and sweeping entire departments off your desk. And if you can get over the guilt, which you've been artificially saddled with,
That's right. It is artificial.
if you can make $1,000 an hour, 1 hour a day, then economically speaking, you're done. You have no further obligation. If you're paying your bills, and you have no further obligation. The universe does not care whether you got your money like scraping one penny together or if you got it in big giant stacks of $100 bills.
There's something else, though, here, Perry, and I know you're going to agree with me. I just know it, okay? And that is that if you really, and I think people would have to really study what you're saying here to really get it in their bones, because it is a little, I think it's a little counterintuitive to the way we all think about things, right?
Totally.
But it's more than just a formula. It's more than just putting on our engineer's hat for those of us who couldn't begin to imagine being engineers, right? But it's more than just a pattern or a formula. But if somebody can at least attempt to try to adopt this, even to some degree, I can imagine that they would start to like who they are when they wake up in the morning.
Yes.
Have better relationships, have like who they are throughout the day, feel good about how they're living their lives. Their lives are going to feel better used. It's not going to be a struggle of, oh my God, am I still doing 80-20? Like almost like this sort of self-conscious dance that they'd be doing all day. Like, am I doing it now? Am I doing it now? But it would be more, it would be creating like a dynamic within yourself that is going to create a much healthier person.
Yes. Yes.
It's not just about money here, what we're talking about.
No, because there's also an 80-20 of what your gifts are and what other people find valuable. So 1% of what you know how to do is 50% of what the world needs from you. And mostly it's stuff that you take for granted. If you do a serious inventory of your gifts and your abilities, and you talk to, which I encourage everybody to do, what you'll find is there's stuff that is so second nature to you that you hardly even think about it.
Yeah.
People like, you are the only person I know who can do that. Hello.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
You're like, oh, shucks. Well, it's like, yeah, but yeah, like, and it's usually, it's so like right under your nose.
Yeah. Oh, it's always right under your nose, but who looks under their noses?
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, Perry, this has been enormously helpful, useful, and insightful. Really appreciate you being here today.
I really appreciate the interview. It's been great getting to know you.
Yeah. So if anybody wants to learn more about your work and the resources that you have to offer, we will have a lot in the show notes, but what would be the best way for them to find you and learn more about you?
Go to perrymarshall.com and you'll find a sign up for a 30-day Street MBA email series. I think that's probably just the quickest, dirtiest, easiest way for people to get a little more. If you liked what you got here, Perry Marshall, MARSHALL.com.
Great.
And you'll find out how deep the rabbit hole goes.
All right. Well, thank you so much for being here. This has been great. Thank you.
Thank you, Tammy.
I hope you enjoyed my interview with Perry Marshall. It was so interesting to speak with him and learn about his professional journey. What is your key takeaway from our interview? If you are interested in any of the resources mentioned in today's podcast, you can find them on the blog page of my website at www.tammygoulerloeb.com. Just look for episode 107. Are you thinking about what's next for you in your professional life? Or perhaps you're feeling just a little stuck. Get specialized group and individualized support, insights, and accountability from a brilliant mix of professional women in a safe, non-judgmental creative space. Join one of my small, hybrid mastermind coaching groups. We're starting on a rolling basis. You can learn more at https://bit.ly/navigating career change. If you were inspired by this episode with Perry, please share it with your friends and colleagues. And don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss next week's show. Remember, subscribing is always free. Are you enjoying the podcast? I'd appreciate your review on Apple Podcasts. It's easy to find through my website at www.tammygoulerloeb.com/podcast. Just click on the Apple Podcast button and follow the instructions provided there. Thank you so much for listening. And remember, it's never too late or too impossible to increase your sense of fulfillment and satisfaction in your work and other meaningful activities. I'd love to hear how it's going for you. Feel free to drop me a line. Bye for now.
Thank you for listening to the Work from the Inside Out podcast. For more information, you can find us at www.workfromtheinsideout.com.